Alright, so here's a quick overview of the monster rig. Now the general approach I used with all the rigs in each heap was to keep them as simple as possible. Basically this game is designed for a portable device, and so the limitations of CPU and memory mean that you can't really go overboard with your rigging, so I just tried to keep it as simple as possible. And the upshot of that is that the rig is actually really easy to break and make some strange shapes with. Normally you would work stuff into your rig to try to avoid that, so that you know, legs don't overstretch and that sort of thing. So instead of taking that approach, I try to keep it as simple as possible and just make sure as I'm animating it to keep an eye on preservation of volume and make sure that the shapes don't go all weird, basically. So a simple example is this relationship I've got between the hips and the ribs. Now it is just a simple parent-child relationship, with the exception that you can see here on the ribs control that I haven't inherited rotation. So if I rotate the hips, you can see the ribs don't rotate. So apart from that, it really is just a simple parent-child relationship. One thing I've got that's different, I mean, as you can see, I've got a controller for the belly and a controller for the butt, just to make some nice, you know, wobbles as the monster walks around. Now what you'll also note is that as I rotate the ribs, the belly rotates with it, and also when I rotate the hips, the belly rotates with it, and that's because I've added this little bone in the middle here called the body bend. And what that is, that bone is not a deformation bone, it doesn't do anything to the mesh, but it's parented to the hips, and then it's got a constraint to copy the transforms of the ribs with only 50% influence. So what all that means is that this bone is sort of like halfway between the hips and the ribs. As you can see, rotate the ribs, it rotates halfway, and then obviously the butt and the belly are just linked to this little bone here. So that's what that does. I've actually done a similar thing with between the ribs and the head. So I've got this bone in the middle here which does exactly the same thing, except in this case it's 0.4 influence, and that's what the shoulders are attached to. So as I rotate this, you can see the shoulders rotate. So once again, I've got these two bones here. They don't really do much more than that. They just sort of halfway influence. So that's the only real trickery there. In the legs, now I did actually at the start when I was playing around, I did actually have a little IK set up and do a regular, what you would normally do with a big rig, you know, and have knees and even foot roll and stuff like that. I found that was overly complicated. When you look at the model, he doesn't really have knees anyway, and as you make him walk, it's just too much to have to worry about, you know, overextension of the legs and foot knee pops and that sort of stuff. So what I've got for the legs is I've got this foot control, which is completely free. It's only, you can see the relationship here, it's only attached to the root, which is what you would normally have an IK set up, but the leg is only just a single bone with a stretch to constraint. Of course what this means is it's very easy to break and make really weird things. I just have to make sure as I animate that I keep an eye on that and don't make any weird shapes. So it's one of the privileges of being the rigger and animator, is you can, you know, there's no point in complaining to yourself about the rig being breakable. You just work as an animator and make sure it happens. It all works. So that's what else can I say about the feet? Oh yeah, now the ankle roll and foot roll, once again very simple. They're just rotational controls. I've actually given myself more degrees of freedom than I need, really. But very simple. I haven't gone the elaborate foot roll setup you would normally have. The shoulders, keeping the philosophy of easily breakable but very flexible. I've got them so you can change the location and the rotation. Same with the upper jaw. I've actually unlocked everything but the Y and Z rotation, so I can rotate in the X, I can grab, I can scale. I figured that would be useful for the eating of the sheep. What else? Yeah, I've got some little controllers here for tweaking the mouth shapes. I figured I would need them, and in the end I did. The tongue controller is another one of those very easily breakable but very flexible things. Nothing too elaborate. I haven't got any sort of IK chain. You would normally do that, I guess. I'm just using a single bone that I can grab, I can scale, and I can rotate, and that was enough for me for the purposes of this game. The blink controls are just scales. Excuse, I've got an old version of the texture which still has the eyes attached to the body, but anyway, you get the idea. To make the monster blink, it's just a simple scale. I just scaled the Y, and I think that's about it for the main controls. Now, so one more thing, I've also added these two bones here. This is for the special eating of the sheep move. So I've got this bone here, which is the sheep target. That is parented to this bone here, which is the sheep move bone, and that is in turn parented to the root bone of the monster. So what happens is the sheep gets parented to the sheep target. When it goes in to eat, the monster goes in to eat the sheep suddenly gets attached to this sheep target bone, and then the sheep move bone is animated in the action, with grabbing, scaling, and rotating. So that's basically how that's done. Just means that the sheep can be in any orientation or in any state, and the monster can come along and just grab it, and the sheep gets attached and thrown into the monster's mouth. So that's about it. In general, I've got the main animation controllers on the first layer. I've got I've got the deformation deformation bones here on this layer for weight painting on the second layer, and on the third layer I've got the sheep move bone. I generally just put the root controller, which I don't animate, it's just on that last layer, and these are just those little extra bones that you never animate. They're just there as part of this functional thing. So, but in general, I'm just working on one layer, on the first layer, and those are my main animation bones. So that's the monster rig.